Welcome back to Defiance of Silence, a Sacred Witness podcast. This season is a field of human stories, and today's conversation explores what happens when we discover the thing underneath the thing. My guest today is Suzette, a U.S. Army veteran, transformational leader, and director of development for Save a Warrior. She has spent decades serving veterans, mentoring women in recovery, and walking her own path of healing and sobriety. But this conversation isn't really about alcohol. It's about what lives beneath our coping mechanisms. It's about shame, control, emotional sobriety, childhood wounds, and the profound power of being witnessed by another human being. Suzette is someone I deeply love and respect. I've personally experienced her compassion, wisdom, and ability to sit with people in their hardest moments without trying to fix them. Together, we explore what happens when survival is no longer enough and what recovery looks like after substance is gone, and why love may be the most powerful source for healing that we have. Before we begin, though, I'd like to invite you to take a brief grounding practice. If it's safe to do so, place both feet on the floor, close your eyes, take a slow breath in through your nose, and a slow breath out through your nose. Notice the chair beneath you. Notice your feet touching the ground. Notice one thing that you can see, one thing that you can hear, and one thing that you can feel. Allow yourself to just fully arrive in this moment. And as always, take what you need and leave the rest. And now here's my conversation with Suzette.
Thank you, Val, and it's lovely to be here with you. Thank you for inviting me, and I've witnessed you hosting this podcast now for the last year, and I'm so proud of you. And this really is a natural thing for you. I can sense that. So
Oh,
I'm
thank
honored
you.
to be here with you.
Well, I'm honored to have you here for this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking before we started recording, like, I don't know what we're going to talk about. We're just going to talk. So, so that's kind of how it goes. Like, it's a little bit willy-nilly, and it's just going to be, I know it's going to be a heartfelt conversation. And you have so much wisdom to offer to people who might be struggling. And you've never been shy about what your struggles have been. So with 20 years of sobriety, you've probably seen a whole lot. And maybe, just maybe today, somebody's going to hear something that they needed to hear that will help them just to keep going for another day. So with that, why don't we just talk a little bit about how you reached that point when you decided enough was enough?
The breaking point.
Yeah.
Yeah, the pivotal point, the I'm done suffering point. Um I was in California, and I attended a meeting down at the Alano Club in Hermosa Beach in Southern California, and there was this young man who stood up and introduced himself and mentioned that he had 9 months of sobriety, and then he had some legal issues, and it's always something happened, and he relapsed. And, I was just sitting there, and I was struck because it had probably been a little too long since I'd been to a meeting. I feel like, as, the longer we stay sober, the better our life gets. We get all kinds of opportunities and, um, and the promises start to come true, and life gets really good. And sometimes, for me, I kind of waffle in and out of 12-step rooms probably the last 2 years. But I've been pretty consistent in my 20 years of sobriety. But just listening to this young man share, his experience, strength, and hope in that moment just took me way back. I was like, oh my gosh, it was that reminder of, oh wow. And all of a sudden I felt this fondness. I had this fondness of, man, he's in such a great place. Even though he's sharing, like he has no idea how he's going to do this. He has, he's stressed, he's ashamed, and his pride and ego were certainly probably a little bit dented, and it took a lot of courage for him to stand up and say that in a room full of probably, I don't know, 40, 50 people, of which we celebrated a lot of milestones in sobriety for other people that morning. And I just remember, as I listened to other people talk, I just sat there and reflected on what that was like for me. And I felt such a fondness for him because he was in the exact spot that he needed to be. And, you know, life is so simple. I know for me, when I got sober, I felt like I had to fix everything right away. And I had lost this chunk of time that, I was scrambling. Definitely my manager, was trying to figure my life out. It's like I had to have this grand plan for my life. What am I going to do now? And how is this going to pan out? And oh gosh, all the things. But I had a sponsor who quickly was like, "Okay, we're going to work through these steps." And I will tell you, it was one of the most peaceful times of my sobriety. It didn't seem like it at the time, but it was so simple. Like, it was so simple. And I can say that when I got sober, I burned everything to the ground. I just burned everything to the ground. Relationships, being a parent, with my daughter, and um my living situation. I lived in a halfway house with 8 other women that I relapsed out of, and ended up back at a different halfway house with the same lady, and just all the love I got from these ladies. And life was pretty simple. It consisted of waking up in the morning and making a list of what was it I needed to accomplish for the day. I'm fresh off active duty, maybe 6 months at this time, because I kind of, it was a bit of a struggle. So it was probably like at the 6 month mark. It was November 1st, 2005, and Halloween was my last drink. And I just remember riding around the city of Detroit on some kind of death wish. And thank God, you know, um, God did for me what I couldn't do for myself. And because I was ready to just continue to burn it to the ground. But I remember making a list, writing out everything that I needed to do the next day. And I actually made my own little planner. My dad gave me this planner for 2006. And but until then, I made my own little planner. I mean, I cut this paper, I stapled it, and I would check off the things that I was able to get done, and it felt like so satisfying. But really, for me, it took it down to the basics: wake up, brush my teeth, take a shower, make my bed, meet with the other ladies, do a little reading in the morning. What meeting am I going to go to? Take care of any kind of paperwork I needed to take care of, find a job, um, get something to eat, take care of what I had to take care of. That for me was a struggle. Just restructuring my whole life, coming from this environment of where everything is structured, and then burning everything to the ground and having to rebuild that. And because I always do so much better in structured environment. So now I had to build this structured environment for myself. And it was powerful. And I will say that building that foundation of just staying in the day, even though I wanted to be 100 different places, but really just staying in the day from the morning to night, in pages 83 through 88 of the big book. You know, um, Whenever life gets a little chaotic for me, I can always return to those pages, because in those pages, it breaks down the day upon awakening, when we retire at night, and it just talks about the basics of the day. So I was so grateful for that young man that stood up, because I really got a reminder, of just how far I've come, and what that was like. And I don't ever want to forget that.
And the courage that it took for him to do that. And I hear a lot of courage in your story too. Our listeners don't know what you had to overcome even to get to that place from your childhood.
Mhm.
I want to just go back to something you said, just for our listeners, because I don't know if everyone will know what you're talking about. You said your manager was trying to figure out. Can briefly, do you think you can give a synopsis
Yeah,
for those that don't know?
absolutely.
What
Well,
is the manager?
one of the things that we learn at Save a Warrior, and also anybody can learn through internal family systems, Dr. Richard Schwartz, we utilize that language of the internal family systems at Save a Warrior. I had no idea until actually in 2023 is when I discovered internal family systems. But um, we all carry 4 people. Our manager who's trying to figure things out, and these are allies, as well as liabilities at time, right? Our firefighter when we're in danger, it's that firefighter that kicks in, or, if we're not a very healthy person, our firefighter tends to self-sabotage. Our exile, which is our little child, the little one that went into hiding at a very young age when something happened. And then, our true self, which is who we were always meant to be, um, given everything that we already have. So, everything we need, we already have. We just have to tap into it.
That's
So, yeah. Mhm.
Thank you for explaining that. And
Sure.
that's I know sometimes I use that language on this podcast and I don't always think I go back and clarify. And I say a lot of times parts of me, and that's what that's referring to,
Yes.
is parts of me. So two
Yes.
things can be true at one time. I can have
Mhm.
this, I'm currently going through something in my personal life, and two things can exist at one time. Parts of me want to blow it up and burn it down. And the other parts of me feel a lot of compassion and sadness and just, you know, um, empathy for this situation and these people. So those two things can exist at once. So sometimes those inner parts, um, for me, feel like they're very much in opposition. But at the end of the day, we're all working together and they become allies. When you first discover them, though, it's like, I think I want to fire this manager and I'm going to fire this firefighter, and they're not my friend because they've caused me all this drama. But once
Mm.
you figure out they're actually your allies that have been just trying to keep you safe. And the reason that they do the things they do is to keep you safe. So thank you for clarifying that. And if
Sure.
anybody has any more questions about internal family systems, there's so much information online. And if you're a veteran and you want to go to Save a Warrior, you can also do that and learn more
Yeah.
about it that way too.
Well, and there's this thing of like, if you quietly say to yourself, "Hello," somebody said it and somebody heard it. So it's that knowing that we are multidimensional beings. And that was really powerful for me, because I just thought I was this one person.
Right.
And it wasn't until somebody broke that down for me and I was like, "Oh, wow. I'm a multidimensional being." Like you
Yeah.
said, all these things can be true at the same time, which explains this passion to always want to do good and get sober. And, you know, um, but at the same time, there was this little self-sabotage that was happening. Yeah. Mhm.
I learned last year actually in doing the IFS workbook. It's a green
Mm.
book it was really, really good for me. Um, and I learned in there that the firefighter was actually part of the firefighter response, because I'm like, I don't have a lot of anger. I don't blow up I don't do all these. I don't show up to blow up. I'm saying all the cliche things. And as I'm reading, I realize that firefighter is the one responsible for the substance use. The firefighter is the one responsible for the numbing. The firefighter is the one responsible for trying to escape pain. And then I went, oh my gosh, the firefighter is much more online than the manager ever was. And I didn't even realize it. And this was
Mhm.
like, I'd been to Save a Warrior at that point when I figured that out, over a year out of the seat. So I was like, what? This is crazy. And realizing that I went down this journey of trying to figure out, well, what do my protector parts, as they call them, what do they want me to know? And I realized that this firefighter was trying to keep me from burning out because the manager is taskmaster and like, do this, do that. And I tend to overrun and do all these things. And I realized that I would just burn out and burn it down. The firefighter would be online. And I thought, this is exactly why I need to make them my allies so we can work together. And I remember the moment that I was driving and you said it. You said, somebody said hello and somebody heard it. And I remember driving and listening to, I can't remember which book that explained it that way. And I was driving and I was like, wait, what? What? And I will never forget it. I was getting gas and I pulled over and I was like, what? I could not for the life of me realize that I just didn't know that. Like I didn't understand that concept. And it's just been such a cool journey since then. And meeting people like you that have the same understanding of this, the conversations can go in 50 million different ways. But if it sounds weird and you're not really sure what we're talking about, we can put a pin in that. And I encourage you to look up internal family systems and just kind of maybe go down that rabbit trail if it's something that interests you.
Well, and you bring me to another point and that's why it's so important to stay in the work because, for me, 12-step work, AA, was really stage 1 recovery, right? I was arresting, the real active parts of me that were putting things into my body, right? So for me, that was stage 1 recovery. And, stage 2 recovery is really dealing with the internal stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, I was, gosh, I was like 16, almost 17 years sober before I even discovered that,
Yeah.
and it just elevated me to a completely different level of knowing and being and understanding. And had I at any time along that path not stayed in the saddle, not stayed in the seat and done the work no matter what, you know, um, even the whole fake it till you make it, till you can't save your face and your ass at the same time,
Yeah.
you know, just staying in the thick of it. Um, More will be revealed, and the literature tells us that, more will be revealed. And that's across, all types of spirituality and consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
More will be revealed. Sometimes we take 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. Sometimes we take 5 steps forward and 1 or 2 steps back,
Yeah.
but the point is that we just stay on that path. And it's just so incredibly amazing what the universe and what my higher power had in store for me. Because when I got sober, let me tell you, this was my plan for me. I was going to get a CDL and become a truck driver and drive across the country. Like that was because
No
I couldn't
way.
stop moving. I just couldn't stop moving. I had it, I was conditioned through the military, and also as a really young person. I always spent a lot of time in other people's houses and places. And it's not that we physically moved, but I was always never in one place for a long period of time. The anxiousness of me to always be somewhere else manifested itself in my adult life. And sobriety and this looking is the one thing that I've done consistent, for the amount of time that I've done it. And so, yeah, it's
I can
just
relate to
incredible.
some of that,
Mm,
like almost like I have this need to constantly be changing something. And if I can't change something, I'll rearrange the furniture. Like
yeah.
it's very interesting when I run across people that have a similar, and I don't know if part of that is just ADHD or what, but I digress. What I was going to ask you is, what I hear you saying is that there's a moment that you find out that there's a thing under the thing. So like the
hmm
alcohol wasn't the thing or the substance wasn't the thing but what was that moment like for you? Do you have a specific moment or was it a series of moments where you realized that the alcohol or the coping itself wasn't actually the problem, that it was
Yeah, it
deeper?
was, when I witnessed, cohort 0208 and 0209. It was a female cohort in March of 2023. Um, the cohort I did in August of 17 in Bandera, Texas, was more of an alumni intensive with cohort 031. And the women's program for Save a Warrior was really evolving and it was figuring itself out. And the parts of me that did this program didn't do, just like all prior alumni. Anybody who came through Save a Warrior prior to maybe, I don't know, 2018, 2019, and even 2020, there with this thing has ever been evolving. Our founder and president, Dr. Jake Clark, is just an incredible human being of looking, and there's so many others that have just brought things to the table of this program. And so I didn't see any of this, but the inside drugstore, like that, when I saw that, when I saw that there was something that happened, to me when I was a child, because the 12 steps for me, really, like, I still felt like there was still something wrong with me in just working the steps. Like, the 12 steps did not allow for this knowing of working through a lot of childhood stuff. It's like, okay, you can speak it, you can share your fifth step with somebody, and the majority, it's like me too. Um, and then it's like dealing with the now. The 12 step is really good at helping you clean up what's happening right here, right now. And then you just continue on that. It's a daily cleanup, right? It's a daily way of living, which is beautiful. But really a lot never really gets addressed. For me, there really wasn't this understanding of, I've still had some of these same feelings. I still had shame. I still had dissociation. I still was in denial about some things. The drama triangle, I was still, running rackets per se, like with my family and, with those closest to me. And so, that stage two recovery, the emotional sobriety, that this program offered, and that introduction to the, ACOA, Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families, that was a game changer because it explained, it's like somebody finally just gave me a map of what happened. And I'm like, oh my God, I get it. And it would allow me to have so much more forgiveness for myself and forgiveness for my family, and this understanding of they don't know what they don't know because I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah, and the
You know?
awareness comes with that, and you're like, "Now I can see the
Yes.
thing under the thing." So for you, finding
Yeah.
the thing under the thing was witnessing other people getting this experience, and so what was that like for you when you were like, "Ah," after that many years of sobriety?
I started working through that laundry list workbook, I think, and I actually bought the book. And I remember having a conversation with Jake, and actually where I was working at the time, I was at the American Legion Department of Ohio. I was the executive director there, and our building is beautiful. And I would allow this ACOA group doing the laundry list workbook, I would allow them to utilize our facility on Friday evenings. So they would come in and set up their meeting. And that was happening for 2 years. And I never once attended any of those meetings. And I remember getting a
Wow.
phone call from Jake in like 2018, 2019, when he first discovered this, incorporating this piece into the program. I'm like, yeah, we do ACOA here. And I bought the book, but I never opened it. I never opened it. I put it on a shelf. And, I left the American Legion in 2021 and moved on to do, modernization of charitable gaming. But I can remember bumping up against people. What was really apparent to me is I kept bumping up against the same type of people. And finally, I had to say to myself, okay, like there's this certain archetype of a person that I bump up against, and there's something there. Like I was noticing how I was feeling, how I would respond. I was noticing the inside drugstore because I know what it's like to have moments of peace.
Yeah.
And so something told me it's in that book. It's in that book. It's in that book. And so I pulled it off the shelf and I started looking at it. And I think I attended one of Larry and Sue Turner's Tuesday meetings. Um, I was doing ambassador work for Save a Warrior. I'd been sending people to Save a Warrior since that fall of 2016. And because I knew the people I would send that would come back, I'd be like, whoa, like, because I was doing,
It's amazing.
claims
Yeah.
at the time, and I knew that there was something very special about this program, but um, it was like a door opened, it was like the key turned and the door opened. But honestly, had I gotten that a moment sooner, I don't think, obviously I wouldn't have understood it then. So for me, there's always this point where it's a breaking point, right? It's being sick and tired of being sick and tired. Therefore, it's in those moments that I actually get some clarity because there's got to be something different. I think for me, that's when I'm the most open because if I can ride the inside drugstore as long as I can, you know, um, I'm not aware of what's actually holding the problem in place.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And let's talk about that. Like, I'm so glad that you said some of this. I've been making some notes here. First, um, lots of Me Too's there, but let's
Mm.
talk about the inside drugstore because people might not know what we're talking about. And that is really just the surge of hormones, chemicals that you have in your body that respond to drama. So when you have a surge of melatonin, uh, dopamine, let me think of the other ones here. There's
Adrenaline,
adrenaline and all of these things that surge.
oxytocin. Yeah.
Oxytocin, thank you. They surge through your body. So when you're having this, say you're having a conversation with somebody and you're elevated or things are happening or work or whatever, and you've got this stuff surging through your veins, when you start to heal, you don't get high as often. And you're literally getting high off this internal drugstore and you don't know it. And you don't
Yeah.
know that you don't know it. So what happens when you start to heal and you get in this world where there's not this drama and you're finding peace, it feels like something is wrong. It feels like I don't know what I'm doing wrong or what's happening because you're not getting that hit from the internal drugstore. And you start to see, because you're pulling back from it, at least for me, I started to see it at play in other people and realize
Mm.
they were getting high off of me. And I'm like,
Mhm.
this drama is not necessary. And I was doing it too. Like, I had to look at myself and say, oh, okay, so the laundry list workbook is just part of that breaking open for me too, where I had to look at myself and say, I became the very thing that I was accusing all these other people of being, and I couldn't
Me
see it.
too.
And just like when you said, like, I couldn't have got this a minute sooner, I wouldn't have understood. And I have that exact feeling about internal family systems and the laundry list. My therapist tried to teach me about internal family systems for months, and I just couldn't get it. I could not get it. I don't know why. I just couldn't get it. And I remember her asking me something about my inner child and who's driving the bus right now. And I'm like, I literally don't understand what you're talking about. And I consider myself a smart
Mhm.
person, and it just made me feel like I'm never going to get this. And when I sat in the seat and everything got explained to me, I went, oh, and then it made sense. And I saw my life uh, lay out before me all of these areas where this internal drugstore was at play. And even to this day, right now, this very moment, even just this week in my life, like realizing, yep, this is still at play in certain areas and I've got more work to do, but I can also see it and I can catch myself. And that's the turning point where you realize it wasn't ever about the substance for me. I say you realize when I realized it wasn't about the substance for me. And I just switched one substance for another. So if I wasn't doing quote unquote a substance, I just switched it for drama or for gossip or whatever else. And
Mhm.
it caused me just as much harm as if I was putting a substance in my body. I don't know if you agree with that, but for me, definitely that emotional sobriety, I kind of rolled my eyes at that because I thought that's silly. Okay, it's emotional sobriety. So what? I'm just not going to defend myself if I have a conflict. Like I had all these things that I
Yeah.
was thinking about it. And I realize now, like, my emotional sobriety is so, so much more important to me than anything else because it keeps me grounded and connected um, to my relationships and to the people around me and to my own recovery journey and healing. So I don't know. I think we're on a rabbit trail now, but
No, I think you're spot on. You're accentuating this with perfect language, and I almost liken this to have you ever had a moment where you're driving in your car, right? There's a song on the radio, but you're just like having an out of body experience in a sense. You're just autopilot, right? And you're thinking, and then all of a sudden you've thought yourself into this like you're having an argument with somebody in your head, and the whole thing hasn't even happened, right?
oh,
You're
I'm the
having an
worst at
argument with
that.
somebody in your head
Yes.
because you know, like, well, if they say this, I'm gonna say that, or I
Girl,
can't
that's the
believe like that
worst.
person, like you're like
Yep.
taken back. Like
Yep.
and this is where like complex PTS and PTS is like so because like constant flashbacks and
Yeah.
memories and like is always so prevalent for me and just the relationship that has with trauma and how the body keeps the score and just how if I think about those things without hallucinating good intent, right? Which is like a reframe, but I don't know that until I spend some time in recovery, but I can work myself up. And what I'm doing is tapping into that inside drugstore. I
Yeah.
am like, I can just start crying. If I think about something long and hard enough, I will just start crying. And that's my mind being able to regulate my emotions, which also leads me to the point that if that is true, as soon as I start feeling that inside drugstore come on, I then have a choice. I have a choice. And my choice, um, I get to decide what am I going to do with this drama I've just discovered. Do you know what I mean? Because
Yes,
I
I
can
do.
start feeling this inside, these different chemicals that I've manifested in my body. I can start feeling them surge through my blood. My heart rate will increase. I'll get a little flush. I will not be paying attention because I'm like
Yep.
ruminating, on things and it's not good. And if I don't have that under control, I, this is how this is how relationships broken. This is how we
Yeah.
blow up
That's how you
relationships.
burn it down.
Next thing you know, I pick
Exactly.
the phone up and I start texting somebody,
Yeah. Yeah,
or I call,
exactly.
yeah, so there's a moment there and that choice. I've never been so aware of choice, in understanding the internal family system and the inside drugstore. Once I'm able to understand that, my life is so much more peaceful
Me
because I
too.
realize how much control I have.
Yeah.
Because, and I remember sitting in an AA meeting one time and we have all these slogans on the wall, like think, which is upside down, and live and let live, and one day at a time, and just for today. And I'll never forget someone threw the card. It was on a card of live and let live in the center of our group. They threw it on the floor, which was the format of this meeting. And that live and let live sat on the floor. And I'll never forget. Oh my God, I get it. I get it. Like having this understanding of like other people can be and do whoever they are, and I can just let them be that. I can let other people just be who they are, and I can live and let live. And when that concept occurred to me, that was a game changer. But
Yeah.
that was prior to me discovering um, the inside drugstore, discovering internal family systems. So these things are actually present in 12-step rooms. It's just how long are we going to stick around to actually allow
Yeah,
that
that's a
to
good point.
penetrate our denial,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
yeah, and our
And
dissociation.
you touched on something in that about how much control you have, but also on the flip side of that, how much control we don't have because
Mm,
we can't control anyone but ourselves. So
mm-hmm.
with that being said, what has sobriety taught you about control?
Um, exactly that. It has taught me that, um that's a great question, Val. I cannot control other people, places, and things, which is the first step. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol. And I always say people, places, and things. But what I can control is my reaction and my response to these things.
Yeah.
Um, and I always considered that to be like, oh, it's the alcohol, or yeah, I probably shouldn't go to the bar, or maybe I shouldn't hang out with that friend. But when it came to my like circle, my inner circle of like family people, for whatever reason, I like exempted them and felt like, you know, there was supposed to be something else existing there that was not. And it took me a while to realize that they're in that same category of people, places, and things. Like, for whatever reason, I had this different idea of my immediate family,
Yeah, that's
you know?
interesting. That's
Mhm.
interesting that you say that, and I can speak for myself that I kind of felt the same way. It was like, well, this applies to, okay, my friendships, my coworkers, the general public, my soul sisters, but this doesn't apply to my parents. This doesn't apply to my siblings. This doesn't apply, but it really does. And it
My
applies to
children.
me and my husband and my kids. Like, yeah, I can't control any of these things. And
Mhm.
for me, releasing control um, was a real lesson in humility because when I realized that that was the source of my fears was losing control. And I would say like, "Oh, I'm a control freak," but I didn't realize the depth of it. So having like the serenity prayer for me and saying like
Mm.
the wisdom to know the difference, like what can I control, what can I not? And that one is me. I'm the only one that I can control has given me so much more freedom to let things go and not um doesn't mean I don't care that somebody, I mean, I have to work through that too. If somebody's um you know behaving in a way that affects me, I have to choose what I'm gonna do about that, but I can't control them, but I get to choose what I'm gonna put in front of me or what I'm gonna allow. Um, and that sometimes can send me into a spiral because I feel like this should be different and I should myself to death. And then I realize I've had this
Yeah.
expectation, and all the expectation did was give me the perfect recipe for resentments, which ultimately harms me.
Mhm.
So when I can pull back far enough to see that, I feel like um, it's no longer about substance and sobriety. It's all about that internal drugstore and that realizing that the surge for control is also for me was the internal drugstore because I felt powerful in certain situations where I could control things and realizing, and it's been humbling that I don't have control of anything. There's
Mhm.
nothing, absolutely nothing I can control. I can manipulate if I want to, which is also on that laundry list trait. I can manipulate and I can say all the things, but it doesn't mean that it's an illusion. Like the control is just an illusion. I'm not actually in control of any of that stuff.
Yeah. And I think it's dangerous too, because when how that can be an asset and a liability is like, you know, I can turn that level of control into my work, and now I can become a workaholic, right? Because if I can
Oh, yeah.
control what's happening at work, there's rewards for that, right? And that feeds into my people pleasing, approval seeking. And
Mhm.
if I can control the outcome of that, it's not harmful. I'm working. I'm not doing all these other things, right? But I can so easily, really exhaust myself with that, and then
Yeah.
I'm very dichotomous. I'm, like, way over here or I'm way over there, and it took me a long time to learn that balance. I remember, um, my first, like, real job, getting sober and post-military, it was with the American Legion, but there was this girl that I worked with, and she would take a vacation, like, every weekends, like, she was going somewhere, and I'm like I can just remember, like, I was such a workaholic because I could control the outcome, and there was a reward for that, and I would exhaust myself, and I was resentful at this girl this woman who would take vacations, and she was living the life, and, I'll never forget what that was like to actually take a vacation. Like, parts of me thought I did not deserve that. But also, when we realize the external things that we can't control and then switch that into, I have power over my own boundaries, right? And then exerting boundaries, um, and that tends to upset the apple cart too of our relationships and people, because I do have the power to have those boundaries, and that there is a level of control that I'm allowed to exercise there. And so I feel like, you know, all of these things, there's a shadow to it, right? There's a positive side and there's a negative side. And just depending on where I'm at in my mindset is how I have that thing, whatever that thing is that um, is either an asset or a liability. And the beauty of that is the awareness of like, oh my gosh, I used to do that, but now I do it like this. Like, seeing those different things that we had, that I had as a liability at one time, transforming that into an asset, and using that in the proper way. That's not just for me, but it's also helpful for others, right? And those, closest to me, you
Yeah,
know?
that's really powerful. So, speaking about that, how, looking at how you used to have it and how you do it now. I mean, I've catch myself doing that too, and it's a beautiful thing to remember where I came from in my healing journey, and I've had all
Mm,
these growth opportunities. But what I do have a question for you about parts of your story. Like, what parts of your story did you used to hide or think that you needed to hide that you no longer feel ashamed about talking about?
Um, I would say, that oh, wow. I got arrested. I was like, "Don't ever talk about that."
Me
Like,
too. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
got arrested. I mean, it's a misdemeanor, but the
I didn't
fact that
know
I
that
got
about you.
arrested.
I did not know that about
Yes,
you.
yes,
Did you know that about me? I don't tell people that very
I
often
did
either, but I'm not
not,
ashamed of
but
it now. I mean,
yeah, it
it's
was
what
so
happened. I
long
was young
ago.
and it's what happened, and
Yes.
I mean,
Um
it is what it is.
And,
But
and that was a pivotal moment for me. Like,
yeah,
that was
me too.
like, oh my gosh, that was the thing I swore I would never do or I would avoid, you know? I think, some other things is like just my family dynamics, it's I always feel like I don't really want it's not like it's not dinner conversation, you know
Right,
what I mean? Even though I feel so affected by, my family, still a lot of times, and I'm healing a lot from a lot of childhood stuff. Like, it's just not something I can really talk about unless we're in conversations like this.
right.
Um, yeah, I mean, parts of me have this like, oh, they're gonna Bec because I have these family issues, like, I'm gonna be seen as somebody who is less than, right?
Yeah. And the
Yeah,
reality
so
is nobody's really immune to these
mhm,
issues. And you find somebody in recovery, they've got a family attached
mhm,
somewhere with some issues, or they had a family with some issues, and whether the denial's still there or not, like, um, I used to think, "Oh," I would say, "Oh, I had a normal upbringing." I would just say, like, "Yeah, I had a normal upbringing. I didn't any issues." And I'm
mhm,
not saying that, I'm not making anybody wrong, but as I've done more work on myself, I realize where these things came from. And I'm like, okay, it was a pretty typical childhood for me because I didn't know any different. Now I know these
mhm,
developmental things um, that either were not attuned to or that happened is what caused some of these issues later. And it's okay. It's just what happened. I'm not making this big story out of it. And I think dropping the shame of that, being able to be witnessed and say like, yeah, me too. And that's one of the beautiful things about Save a Warrior is you go and you realize that you're not alone. And frankly,
mhm,
you're not that special is how I take it. Like we all have stuff.
mhm,
So I'm not that special. I'm not defective and helpless and alone like I've told myself that I am. So for someone to sit and listen to my story and go, me too. And then you're like, wait, what? Like how is this not how am I not a unicorn that's so unique, you know? Um, and then realizing that that's powerful to be witnessed in that. And I think that counts in sobriety too. So for somebody, as we get ready to finish this conversation, I feel like we've kind of gone all over the place, but thank you so much for all of this insight. Somebody that's just kind of new into their sobriety journey, what would you say to them? Like they're going to AA meetings, but the struggle is real. Like, what do you say to them?
The struggle is where it's at. Like if you want anything worthwhile in life, you're going to struggle for it, and the peaks and valleys aren't, they don't get so high and they don't get so low. Somewhere along the way, they're just not as high and not as low. But the first 5 years is building that foundation. That is key. Um just do it for 5 years and then decide from there. And I know it sounds like a long time, but it is just one day at a time. And I relied on my own thinking and my own decisions for so long. Adopting this relationship, like spirituality is going to change. It morphs consistently. The spirituality and what I thought my God was when I first got sober is nothing like what my God is today. And it has transformed all along my journey. It's never stayed the same. And as long as I kept looking, um, you know, like I said earlier, more will be revealed. But also, there's a lot of choices in AA regarding like where I can go to meetings, who I can hang out with. If I don't like this group over here, if I've outgrown a group over here, I go to another group. Like I am not
Yeah.
afraid to move around in AA. I'm not
Yeah.
afraid to I didn't just I had one sponsor for a really long time, and that was really important. Like, don't sponsor hop early in sobriety either. Do what the sponsor tells you to do in a sense and work through those uncomfortable things where, you may want to run from that sponsor because you don't like what they had to say. Sitting in that uncomfortableness of hearing the truth about myself was probably the most pivotal growth moments because I was always able to work through that on the other side. And I was so glad when I wanted to just like middle finger everybody and beat it,
Yeah.
and my sponsor always knew like when that was coming. And eventually I would just shut up and just listen, and try to figure out like what is causing me to do this? Why am I
Yeah.
acting this way? What is it about this? And usually if I just sit with that, it I get educated on what that really is. And
Mhm.
then and I'm so happy and grateful like, "Oh my gosh, I figured something else out about myself."
Yeah.
When I got here, I didn't know what color I liked. I didn't know what my favorite food was. I didn't have a hobby. I didn't know what I really like to do.
Mhm.
I was just in this whole self-discovery period. And that is one of the most beautiful places to be, as painful as it is, and as excruciatingly painful as it can be, and uncomfortable. In the discomfort is is like two things can be true at the same time.
Yep.
There can be so much love and so much awareness and joy and peace in all of that discomfort. But if I leave before the miracle happens, so cliche, don't quit before the miracle happens. It's so true, because they do happen. Staying sober for a day as an alcoholic, that's a miracle. Like we are all walking around as miraculous human beings that we were able to overcome and survive the things that we're doing. We don't do it perfectly, but those are miraculous things that are happening to us, within us, and we're being a part of other people's miracles as well.
I love that, being part of somebody
Mm.
else's miracle, that's beautiful. Um, so what do you think people need most when they're suffering? Do you think eh, they need advice, they need solutions, they need space, they need what do they need to really I mean, we can't make somebody hit bottom. You hear that all the time. Like, you're never
Mhm.
gonna, change unless you hit bottom, you hit bottom, you hit bottom, or that pivotal moment where something breaks and changes. But when somebody finally says, "Okay, I'm at the bottom. This is," what do they need?
Love.
Yeah.
They need love,
Yeah.
and watching somebody do that is so hard because there's parts of us that are just like, like I can be like, "Look at all I've done for you and look what you're doing." That's so not right. It's just that, you know, I have to watch and just be a steady pillar of love, and I can have boundaries, but I have people, circle back around. I have a lot of women who circle back around that I have just watched, I've just watched them on this destructive pattern, and I answer the phone and I answer the text message and I wish them well and I'm like, I love you and I'm so glad you reached out but I have to be also careful of my time and how much energy I give that. But I always try to mirror back love because I know what that's like to be hurting and to be harming myself and to be thinking I'm the only person in the world and nobody understands. I'll
Yeah.
never forget there's so many people in my path that I would go to in my lowest of low that just opened up their home to me. They fed me, they fed me, they clothed me, um, just loved me,
That's
and
beautiful.
I will never forget those people. And it was powerful because I always knew there was somebody out there that I could turn to.
Yeah, and I think, um, when someone's struggling in addiction, no matter what it is, even if it's not
Mm,
a substance, any kind of addiction, you know, love is something that it needs to be unconditional, and they don't always see that and feel that, or they don't see it as love. I mean,
mhm.
there's that side too. And what's one thing you wish people would understand about addiction?
Um, that there's so many powers at work. I mean, it's a spiritual sickness. It's a biopsychosocial psychological sickness that's happening. Like parts of me are like I feel like sometimes it's a possession. It's a some type of possession that's just taken over our spirit. People are like, "Oh, you can just say no." No, because once we put that substance in our body, it's obsession of the mind and compulsion of the body. And being able to stop, I mean, the level of shame that we create in that we just continue to perpetuate because I can't believe I did it again. I did it
Mm,
again. I did it again.
mm,
And I have to cover up that shame. Like, I have to keep covering that up, because I cannot feel that, and that's what kept me out there for a really long time, um, in a sense it kept me actively, drinking and, playing around with other substances because I was trying to knock off whatever ounce of shame or guilt that I was feeling.
right, and then to come on the other side of that and just feel more like it's
Yeah.
temporary, and something that's important for people to understand, in my opinion, is that shame dies when it's in the light. Like, it doesn't live
Mhm.
if it's exposed and you can say the thing. And that's where witnessing and being a sacred witness comes in. And it's so important because, I mean, we can have these conversations all day, um, because we've done some work. But for the person that's really struggling, or maybe a family member that has an addict that they love, like,
Mhm.
what do they do? I mean, there's so many different types of advice and things that you can do, but I think the answer always comes down to love and boundaries, but there's so much work that can be done, and it's so hard to receive love when you're an addict. So, I don't know what the answer really is other than we gotta love each other somehow,
Yeah.
somehow we've got to, and I appreciate you sharing just pieces of there's so much depth to you, Miss Suzette. We could talk forever, but we're gonna have to take another time to talk some more, I guess, but I just really, um we didn't get to talk too much about how you hold space for others and you mentor and you bust your tail for Save a Warrior to get the funding so these
Mhm.
veterans and first responders in Ohio and veterans across the nation can come and learn more about this stuff and get free from those things that are causing our warriors to commit suicide and to really just shame spiral. So your work is so important, and your personal life has inspired you into this work, and it inspires me. And I'm hoping that somebody listening today will hear just a little bit of what we talked about and be curious enough to go to saveawarrior.org and check it out. Maybe they're
Me
suffering. Maybe they
too.
know somebody that's suffering. And if they come, they might get to meet you. That would be exciting.
They might.
That would be exciting.
Yeah.
Um, so when you do hold space, obviously there's a cost to doing that kind of work where you're witnessing these things. And sometimes things bump against our own stories. Like that's normal. Like we have a nervous system that responds to all of these things. What do you do as a personal practice for yourself to let go of those things that aren't yours to carry?
I give it to God, especially when I'm like, I will pray for you. I actually stop right there in that moment and ask God, whatever your will is in this situation,
Me too.
may that
Yeah.
be done. And I just lift this person up to you. And, yeah. And then I just let it go because it's not mine to carry, but um, I can be an intercessory for you, um, and lift you up to God. And I do it immediately. I'm like, I just pause and just do it because it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
have to be this whole long
Right.
drawn out ritual thing. But, what we do here at Save a Warrior, we hold up a lot of space for a lot of women. And we hear some really, sometimes most of the time, it's just really, horrific stuff, and energy, it's all energy. And so being able to release that energy, we do it through the fire. I sage. I believe in sage. I believe in the power of what God gave us and herbs and all that stuff. And so I will cleanse my space. I will meditate. I like little crystals. I just think everything has energy. But especially, that power of God and just visualizing, like, I like to visualize actual energy being moved.
Mm,
And that is very, very powerful.
that is powerful.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
Hmm.
So at the end of every episode, we like to just take a moment and we're going to just release those things that aren't ours to carry.
Mm.
And we had a lot of beautiful conversation today, and some of it's heavy, some of it enlightening, I hope, for people. But as a witness, somebody that's listening, they may not always know what's theirs to carry, and they're on this journey figuring it out. And hopefully this helped them a little bit. But for now, we're just going to open our hands, palms up, close your eyes, take a breath in. Take one thing that you can let go of, that you don't want to carry anymore. Breath out, push your palms to the ceiling. Let it go. Thank you for spending this time with Suzette and I. Thank you for witnessing this conversation. What stayed with me from the conversation with Suzette and I is just the reminder that healing isn't always about removing the thing we can see, but sometimes it's about having the courage to look beneath it. And I want to just encourage you, whether you're navigating recovery, loving someone who is, or simply trying to just understand your own patterns a little better. I hope you heard something today that will remind you that you're not alone. And one of the things Suzette said that stayed with me also is that when people are suffering, what they need most is love. Not fixing, not rescuing, not perfect answers. Love. The kind of love that stays present and holds boundaries, and the kind that sees another person's humanity, even when they're struggling to see it themselves. So as you move through the rest of your day, notice what you're carrying, notice what belongs to you, and what can be set down. Take a breath, be present, and as always, you are worthy of being witnessed. See you next time.